Sorry, then we do have all of our panelists for this first session gathered here today. So with that, it is my great honor to welcome you all, and please be seated. Good morning, everyone. It is an honor for the GEF Environmental Facility to hold the GEF 7 Partnership Forum on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. Thank you. My name is Gabriella Richardson-Tam, and I will be your Master of Ceremony throughout the whole day today. So if you have any questions, please come to me. At the GEF Secretariat, I work at the GEF Secretariat in Washington, D.C., where I lead work on civil society, stakeholder engagement and partnerships, social inclusions, and the GEF Small Grants Program. It is my great pleasure to be here with you all today, and looking forward to all of the conversations that I hope we will have. Before I actually should start, I would like to remind you that this plenary session, we have translation and wonderful interpreters in the back. Please, if you are like me, not knowledgeable in all languages, English, French, and Spanish, please have your headphones ready by your seat or on your heads. Thank you. So, civil society days and meetings at the Assembly has always been an important thing for the GEF. But this one is even more important. It's even I shouldn't say more important, but a really special event. This partnership forum today, as we gather, for this one, we have a record high participation of civil society, indigenous peoples, local communities, as well as youth. So for us, this is really a privilege to hold the Partnership Forum here with all of you. What the Partnership Forum encapsulates is a GEF 8 whole society approach, which is really built on the understanding and the importance that in order to address the environmental crises around us today, we need to work in partnerships with government, private sector, civil society, and rights holders. This is the only way that we can address the crisis we have in front of us. Before we move forward, let me also recognize that this partnership forum has been a partnership in itself in terms of its planning and organization. The Partnership Forum has been planned and organized in collaboration with the GEF CSO network, which you will hear more from later today. The GEF Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group, the GEF Gender Partnership Group, as well as the Small Grants Program, and many of the youth delegates that we have here today have joined us in pre-assembly events. And of course, I should not forget, this event has been organized and planned with support and in close collaboration with the Government of Canada. I thank you very much in advance for that. Our hope for this Partnership Forum is that it will provide many opportunities for rights holders, for civil society, for youth, for women leaders, to share their voices, or for us to hear their voices, hear their rights and interests, and to share their experiences with each other and with all of us here. I also hope, and we hope, that it will provide ample opportunity for all of you to network with each other, get to know each other, and learn from each other. We are very excited about the hubs around here that you can meet and get to know each other. We are also very excited about this forum as it presents an opportunity and prospect that it will spark discussion and ideas around new ways for the GEF to really engage, support these important stakeholders. So I urge you through the day to raise your voice and speak. Be open to join with ideas with the GEF partnership. So thank you. With no further ado, it is now my honor to introduce to you Tsleil-Waututh Nation's elder, Colin Thomas, who has kindly offered to welcome us all here as we gather at the beginning of today. Thank you. Was this, can I leave it there?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Siamni siaya I tinish gwalwyn kwtsi kwtsnala iwi and ansachalot and the mana santhalia I kweth ansachalot and the imeth kweth ansachalot I kweth slachot siam I kweth squestematoch I kweth halat Hai sepka amit sepwatwilam I hamatquium I skochotmish I slawata tamath. So what I said to you in the very teeny tiny bit of my language that I know called Hunkamitnam or Downriver Hulkamelam, I said, my respected ones, the feelings I have inside are really good. I'm really happy to see you and to be with you here today. And in our cultural ways, I introduced myself to you with my ancestral name. I carry the name Ansachalot. I don't know that it has any meaning, but it's very meaningful to me because my grandmother had to research that name. She had to find that name. Back in the day of colonization, all our names were stolen from us. So when I became of age or became worthy to carry the name, she put names on my sister and I. So my parents are, and in our cultural ways, I shared a little bit of our family tree. And we do that for many reasons, but the most important is that it informs you, the audience, that I know who I am. I know where I come from. And as a Wamochta, as a grandmother, I carry that responsibility a lot more dearly these days. I have 5 beautiful grandkids. Plus a couple of extra who chose me to be their granny. So my parents are Deanna George and the late hereditary chief Ernie George, or Iggy as his friends called him. Both sets of my grandparents have passed on. My paternal grandparents are hereditary chief John L. George and Lillian George, or Dolly, as her friends called her. For a real long time, I did not acknowledge my mother's parents. And I guess as I was becoming closer to becoming a grandmother myself, it just really made me pause to wonder why. Because both my grannies were very important. They were integral to the formative years in my life. And what I realized was that I was a very colonized person. You know, back in the day when they were building Canada, they took all the Indians, they called us Indians back then, and stuck us on reserves, drew borders around those reserves and labels. They effectively divided us, and they set us against each other. So then we're in competition for lands and resources with our dear relatives. So in an effort to decolonize myself and reconcile my relationship with my sister nations of the Musqueam and the Squamish, it's with great honor and respect that I acknowledge my grandfather comes from the Squamish Nation. His name was Stanislaus Joseph. My grandmother comes from the Snuneymuxw, the Nanaimo people on Vancouver Island, and Kincolith. My grandfather comes from Kincolith, the Nisga'a people up in the Nass Valley, beautiful Nass Valley. And raising my hands, this is a gesture of welcome here in Coast Salish territory. Hi, Sepka, thanking all of you. Amit Sepwatwilam, welcoming you here to the homelands and waters of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh people. I am from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Tsleil-Waututh in our language means people of the inlet. It refers directly to that beautiful body of water that you see out here that they call the Port of Vancouver, all the way up to the Indian Arm, including the Indian River Valley. So again, just echoing Gabriella's words, welcome you here. I hope all goes well. I hope you get to see some of our culture while you're here, and just a thank you. OCM. Thank you, Gabriella. Oh, I gotta exit this way. Oh, you do?
Wow. I cannot thank you enough, Charlene, for that. What I took away and what I'm really happy to see is the opening of the arms, the welcome, and thank you for welcoming us to here today. And this, for me, really sets the scene and foundation of what we are here to do today. Thank you again. While you can see around us that there should be many youth joining us here today. Maybe some can raise their hands. I see a couple already and met many. Thank you for that. But there were many that, of course, like many others, that were not able to join us here today, but really has the same commitment that those that are here. So what I'm planning to do right now is to play a video from some of those that were unable to join us today. It shows the perspectives of youth around the world that are committed to building a better world through action in their countries and in their communities. This video is a result of a pre-assembly youth dialogue organized virtually by the UN Association of Canada to promote global participation and inclusion in this 7th GEF Assembly. Please, let's see if we have luck on our side to see if we can see the video from these youth. Thank you.
Across the world, youth are at the forefront of developing grassroots initiatives, successfully addressing the specific climate needs in their respective communities.
Understanding the basics of environmental finance is important for the creation and adoption of more responsible practices to resource utilization and investment that do not compromise on the opportunities for future generations.
Environmental finance is important from a youth perspective as it can allow youth to lead in setting realistic goals, create opportunities, and to teach the future generations to develop their own sustainable habits to continue to care for the environment.
A universal understanding of the environment as a foundation
for the future will enable young people to enact change
that will benefit and cherish all generations.
Environmental finance will allow youth to learn and create new opportunities for growth, understand the economic limits of goal setting, and enhance public awareness.
Environmental financing allows youth to align financial decisions with sustainability and have achievable goals.
From a youth perspective, environmental financing holds immense importance because it directly impacts our future and the health of the planet we will inherit.
Environmental financing is important for us as youth because we are the ones who have the energy and boldness to take action in favor of our planet. Yet, we often hit a brick wall when it comes to financing our projects and initiatives.
Hey Jeff, let's come together to protect our environment for a bluer and greener tomorrow.
Wow, thank you so much. This was wonderful. it just made me remind myself that yesterday was my son's 22nd birthday. And I have two young, one 21 and one 22. And so I really, as with everyone here, really put my hope of their work and your work. And this was so nice for you to welcome us here today. So thank you, everyone. So I will try to make sure that we are keeping on the schedule. And we have a very interesting program in front of us. In fact, we have something very special lined up for the remainder of this morning. And for this, I'm super happy and excited to hand over the stick to Emily Leclerc. Please, Emily, join me. Emily has exciting, I should never leave the mic, should I? Have an exciting background, being an actor, theater creator, host, and for anyone that participated in the Impact 5, I should not say acronyms, so the International Marine Protected Areas Congress a while back, where she also was the Master of Ceremony. So thank you, Emily. It is such a pleasure to have you here today. And good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gabriella, for this really warm introduction. And I want to thank also Ms. Carlene Thomas from Tsleil-Waututh Nation for taking the time to come and greet us this morning. I am thrilled to serve as your moderator, facilitator for this morning's partnership forum called Sustainable Solutions for a Healthy Planet through dialogue, inclusion, equity, and a stronger role for civil society. I also want to acknowledge how grateful I am to be able to work, live, play, and assemble with you all on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We're going to have the pleasure of hearing from representatives of our 3 host First Nations in this morning's opening ceremony, no, this afternoon's ceremony. So make sure you stay with us throughout the day. We are shaking things up a little bit this time around for the 7th Assembly of the Global Environment Facility. And it was super important. It was a priority for everyone involved at the GEF to make new and diverse voices be heard in this morning's partnership forum, including that of youths, Indigenous peoples, and civil society organizations. So they are taking center stage in this morning, setting the stage for change. So I would like to invite 3 inspiring environmental leaders to come and join me on stage. Ms. Priska Daka, Regional Co-Coordinator, Global Youth Biodiversity Network, Zimbabwe. Ms. Devi Angreni, President of the Indigenous Women's Association of the Archipelago and member of Women in Global South Alliance, Indonesia, as well as Ms. Alisi Rabukawaka, environmental and indigenous activist, Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group member. So please, let's give them a big warm of applause. So I don't know about you, but if I was asked to discuss my hopes and expectations for the future, it is quite a rather complex thing. There are so many environmental and climate challenges that are happening currently at local, national, and global levels. So it is a really loaded question that we're asking our participants. So we try to pare it down and ask them to describe an image related to environmental degradation and climate change crisis that affects them or the community that they're representing. What's in that image? What's at stake? And also outline their ideas on how to improve that image, as well as share expectations and guidance to this assembly, as well as the GEF partnership on their ideas on what should be done. So we're going to start with Ms. Daka.
When I was growing up, my family and I used to go to national parks, and I was blessed enough to see giraffes, impalas, and even rhinos in the wild. But there's one elusive creature that I'm so curious to see, and that is the rhino. During my last visit at the Sawe Valley Conservancy, I did get a glimpse of the legs of the rhino, but that's not enough to satisfy my curiosity to see a full rhino in the wild. This story serves to remind us of these special places, the ecosystems that we need to protect today. We are losing species every day. Species are facing extinction, and this is because of our actions. We need to change our actions today. And this doesn't only affect the animals, the species, it's also affecting us. It's also affecting the communities, the global majority that is not responsible for causing the environmental challenges that we are facing today. My name is Priska Daka, and I'm representing the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, specifically the regional chapter GYBN Africa, and I'm from Zimbabwe. As youth, we are excited to be here and very grateful that the GF has provided this opportunity. This is the first assembly that has seen the largest number of youth represented in this assembly, and we hope to see that, and we hope to see this change to continue even beyond this meeting, and we hope to see, and we hope to also see. So while the opportunity to build partnerships is very important, I would like to say that we are organizing the second African Youth Summit on biodiversity that's going to be held in Rabat, Morocco, and we are calling on all of you to support us, to engage with us as African youth. We are building on the momentum that we set at COP15, and we are hoping that African youth and the youth can be engaged in implementing the Kunming Global Biodiversity Framework. One of the challenges that we are facing as young people, although we have this space that we have at the GF, is we still see there is bureaucratic processes when it comes to accessing funding. And we're hoping that is going to change, that is going to be an issue of the past. And one of the things that I would also like to say is I'm hoping that we can open up the door for discussions to include youth in the GF Council as observers so that we can contribute, so that we can be meaningfully engage and contribute in these processes that we have today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Daka. Let's move on to Ms. Devi Angraney, President of the Indigenous Women's Association of the Archipelago and member of Women in Global South Alliance, Indonesia.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm working for 380,052 indigenous women as a member of this organization. Its meaning is we are working with 2,000 more indigenous communities in Indonesia. For me, I have a bitter, it's so bitter experience. I lost my community, changed, become urban area. It's not easy for us to be there, to see due development and a lot of concession grab our land. I feel this experience didn't want to affecting other communities in Indonesia too. That's why we are here. I'm here in solidarity with Women Global South Alliance. We want to share and strengthen our networks as indigenous people, Afro-descendant and local women and girls to be here to raise our voice, because there is not enough space for us to bring our voices as a woman. Territory is a foundation for us to developing, maintaining, practicing our knowledge. This is a part of roles of indigenous women, Afro-descendant, and local communities women. This is like taking care for this world and biodiversity, and this is like a part of how we can use this to access exercising our rights. What we want to say it, please, stakeholders, donors, governments recognize us as indigenous people. We are talking about the human rights. We are a part of that. And we want to bring these issues in this situation. Climate change is a part of threat us with the project, a lot of projects like green energy and others. And how we want to work with this? We try to look at the situation, and we want suggestion, learning from the GF Gender Partnership, insight, experience, and best practices. GF can enhance the effectiveness and impact of its initiative while ensuring long-term sustainability. GF should proactively incentivize and prioritize projects led by women's groups, acknowledging their pivotal role in driving transformative impact. Recognize the significance of behavioral changes catalyzed by women's environmental action and the ripple effects they create by emphasizing long-term results. GEF can imply the value and efficacy of short-term projects while capturing the intricate interplay between social, cultural, and environmental dynamics. I think this is, we want to push this message for anybody here. And the important thing is recognize us, territories, as indigenous people, Afro-descendant, and local communities, women.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this highly personal testimony. Let's move on to Ms. Alisi Rabukawaka, Environmental Indigenous Activist, Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group member.
Thank you so much. And before I begin, I'd also like to acknowledge the warm traditional welcome this morning. Thank you so much. It always makes our stay complete when we know that the indigenous peoples and owners of the land also welcome us. And second to that is at the beginning of my remarks, I also had a story about my name, and so I felt very connected to what you had shared as well. So my name is Alisi Tokalaundi Maithaka Rompukawanga. We have very long names where we come from, and they tell many different stories. But as I was preparing for this, I started to think to myself, did my elders imagine that one day the name they bestowed upon me when I was 8 years old would one day be uttered aloud in this room here today? Did they imagine, or could they have imagined, that in my lifetime, we would be facing this global environmental crisis? I cannot say for sure, but for now, I've been asked to set a scene for Partnership Day. So as we best do, from my country, from Pacific Islands, we are orators, our history is oral. I'll tell a story. In the province of Mbua, where I come from, in Fiji, a small island with a large ocean, we prefer to identify as large ocean states. Right now, a community is relocating their village after a cyclone struck in 2019, a Category 5 cyclone. It destroyed over 30 homes. The riverbanks burst. It redirected the river. Vegetation was uprooted, changed their landscape. And for about 4 years, they have been living in tents, in dire situations and conditions, while waiting for the necessary funds and assistance to reach them. But that's not the whole story. This is not a pitiful, woe is us story. This is a story about strength and resilience. My people are strong, and using their knowledge and their resources, they were able to identify a new place to relocate to. They were able to have the necessary negotiations and discussions using all of our traditional links and ties. They managed to at least figure out some of the basics of the situation and find at least some funding to help them with this process. But what about the next cyclone? What about the next village? Imagine this story multiplied by 23 Pacific Island countries and territories. Imagine across SIDS, imagine across the world. That is the reality that we are facing. We do not have infinite resources. We do not have infinite land to relocate to. Even for a population of about 900,000, we are trying to figure this out. Now imagine countries that have millions. Imagine 7.6 billion people in this world. For us, our greatest resource is the ocean. That's where our livelihoods come from. That's where breath comes from. But now it's also turning into our greatest struggle. The coral are dying. The fish are being over-harvested. The ocean is used as a dumping ground, rubbish, sewage, treated nuclear wastewater. That's the reality we're facing today. We're given all sorts of graphs, research, and opinions flung at us to describe the reality, but for us it's simple. We're not acting fast enough. And in all places in the world, in all configurations of people, the people in this room, the people at this assembly would know best the story that I am telling. My hopes and dreams are big, but like a mentor told me, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. So when I share about my hopes and aspirations, I ask that we open our minds and perspectives. We challenge our perceptions. We challenge our education. We question the way things are structured right now. Collectively, we can do that. We've heard from my sisters ways in which we can do that practically. And we scare ourselves with big dreams for our common earth, our common home, our Mother Earth. To the Assembly and the GEF partnership, it's the bureaucracy for me too. I only ask we move faster than the biodiversity and climate crisis we are now living in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rabukawaka, for these very inspiring words. I would now like to invite Mr. Akhtaruzaman Sano to come join us on stage to provide some remarks on what we've just heard. Mr. Akhtaruzaman Sano, Chair of the GEF Civil Society Organizations Network.
Good morning. Very good morning. You had good sleep yesterday? So, because the sound is not very strong. So, first of all, on behalf of the GEF CSO network, we welcome every one of you to this assembly and particularly to this special partnership. This is a day for the civil societies, indigenous peoples, youth, gender, and governments, everybody. We are living in one planet. This is our home. So we need to find a way to make this planet livable, safe for our future generations. I have 2-3 short questions to you. What do you think? The global warming is increasing or decreasing? Increasing? Yes? Yes. The flood and drought is increasing or decreasing? Increasing. Forest fire. We couldn't see the very nice sky last 3 days I am here because of the forest fire. So that means all forms of extreme weather events have been increasing. It is an evident that what we have been doing, that is not enough. The way we have been doing, it was not enough. We need to find something innovative approach. When we talk about innovation, then if we keep in our mindset what we have been doing, how we have been doing, then innovation is not there. We need to close our eyes and mind and look at standing outside of the box to the open space and see, write on a white paper in a new way, with new thoughts and new mechanism. Based on the experiences we learn, what we have heard from these brilliant participants, the panel members, what we have been learning from our everyday experience, what we have been learning every day, morning to evening and night, around the life cycle of us. So if we want that innovation, then we have to live. We have to forget, at least for a short while, what and how we have been doing. So if we want this innovation, if we want to go further for safer planet, first of all, on behalf of the GEF CSO network, we have only 4 recommendations. Recommendation 1 for the GEF Secretariat, to be more robust, to be more capable, to facilitate the processes. Again, we are telling you have been doing good, but we need to do best. If we keep doing the same thing, forest fire is coming. If we don't control this fire, we will be controlled by the fire. So, this GEF Secretariat have to be restructured, reformed in a way that it can face all challenges. And welcome our CEO, Carlos Manuel, he is coming. And I strongly believe he can facilitate this process. Council members, the governments can support this process. We need to bring in education as a cross-cutting focal area of the GEF, every level. So when a student come out from grade 5 to high school, they know what is environment. They don't need to be the expert during the working life. So this is how the GEF Secretariat should focus. Second part of this restructuring, the GEF Secretariat should come out with more capacity, strengthen its country support program, programming department, so that they can support the countries, and that will better help. Second recommendation for the country levels. Governments have been working with civil societies, private sectors, indigenous peoples, gender, everyone. They have to be more robust so that they can develop their own projects. Last 30 years, GEF has been supporting them, and I strongly believe every country have that level of capacity to develop their programs and projects and directly come to the GEF. I just remember one comment from her. The disaster, the level of forest fire, the level of challenges are increasing. But the way we are moving, example, one project from the GEF to come to the ground need more than a year, more than 2 years. We are living in a very latest technological life. Around us, knowledge, technology-based facilities are a lot. So we need to use it. Find a way that 3 to 6 months, beginning the project and implementation beginning at the grassroots level, not more than 6 months. And the GEF Secretariat have to ensure. The third, monitoring and evaluation. We have brilliant IEO doing the evaluation. Maybe that can be further improved to do the monitoring, real-time data with science-based technology and everything. The last one, GEF agencies have been doing brilliant jobs for the GEF. So this is a time to review their terms of reference. Whether GEF Secretariat and the governments, they can directly handle this, or still we need the GEF agencies. Because we need to increase our efficiency, we need to save our time, we need to reach to the ground level, and we want to have a safer planet for our future generation. If not, sad time is coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sano. Speaking of the GEF Secretariat, it is my honor to introduce Ms. Susan Waitaka to provide a brief overview of the objective and agenda for the forum.
Thank you very much, Emily. And it is a pleasure to be here and to take you through what you expect for the rest of the day. We've just had a wonderful setting the scene, and we will now take you through the agenda. Immediately after this, we will have our CEO, Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, give us his remarks. And after that, between 10 and 11 a.m., we have an intergenerational chat where an interesting panel will tell us how they got started and give us messages for the future. This will be moderated by Emily. At 11 o'clock, we have a volunteers recognition event by the United Nations Association in Canada. You have all seen the wonderful smiling volunteers, and there will be a recognition moment for them. From 11:30 to 3 p.m., we will break out into groups we are calling confabs, 3 confabs. The first one has a focus on youth. It's the intergenerational collaboration for our future. It will take place in room 220, 221, and 222. That is on the second level, and we have staircase on this side and several escalators around the block. Confab 2 is focused on women's leadership in environmental action and will take place in room 212, 213, and 214. The third confab is Indigenous Stewardship of the Global Environment, and this one will take place right here in this room, ballroom AB. Each confab has got its own detailed program, which you can find on the GEF website, and these confabs will go on till just before 3 p.m., and we'll have a break for lunch as necessary. We will reconvene here at 3 o'clock for the final plenary, sharing experiences and ideas for change, where we will listen to the key messages and key takeaways from each of the confabs sessions presented by a high-level panel. So you don't want to miss that in case you've not been able to participate in the confabs. At 4 p.m., to cap this partnership forum, we will have a celebration of the inclusive GEF Assembly Challenge Program winners, a session you do not want to miss. Our CEO will close the partnership forum with some exciting announcements, and we will then transition to the official opening ceremony of the Assembly and the reception at 6 p.m. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Waitaka. I would now like to introduce the man of the hour, the key person behind the vision for this inclusive assembly. He has the training of a lawyer, experience of being the Minister of Environment of Costa Rica 3 times, but more importantly, he is the current CEO of the GEF since June 2020. And if that weren't enough, well, he's an avid surfer on the side. So please give a warm welcome to Carlos Manuel Rodriguez. Very nice to meet you. Likewise, we are very honored to have you. Oh, my pleasure. All right. Thank you so much. So Mr. Rodriguez only has a few minutes with us, so I'm going to jump right in and ask him some questions. We've had the chance of hearing some personal stories from our 3 participants in this morning, setting the stage for change. Thank you so much for these generous testimonial. I'm curious what your story is. What got you started as an environmental leader? Do you have an anecdote from your childhood or your past that is connected to your ongoing commitment to the environment?
Oh, what a great question, Emily. Thank you so much. When I was a kid in the 70s, there was not such a thing as environmentalists or conservationists or nothing like that. A few scientists working on it. And I spent 3 months out of a year, my summer school holidays, in my grandfather's farm, coffee farm, which is right next to a large, huge forest, which is, by the way, is a complex of protected areas nowadays in Costa Rica, 1 million hectares. And I remember, and when I was a kid, I was very much into nature, but what kids did do in the 70s with nature, I was very good in hunting birds. Yeah, hunting birds, yeah. I was very good in hunting birds. And I went to a forest right next to my grandfather's farm, a primary forest full of birds. I captured them. And from one year to another, the forest disappeared. And it had a huge impact on me because, the birds that I capture, I didn't kill them. I hunt them to keep them as single birds in cages, and I had like 20 birds in my home. This is the way we connected with nature, and that forest disappeared. And by the way, that was the beginning of the end of me hunting birds. It had a major impact. So I began putting attention about deforestation in my country, trucks moving logs all over the country. Costa Rica had, at that time, the highest rate of deforestation per capita of the planet. I didn't realize that, but that has a huge, huge impact in me. When I went there after a year to my forest to hunt some birds, and there was no forest.
Wow, thank you for sharing. Voices of the youth, indigenous peoples, civil society organizations are put center stage in this morning's partnership forum. And I'm curious, why was it so important to you and the GEF to make inclusion, equity, diversity such a priority in this 7th Assembly?
Well, there are many reasons. One is that I've been working in civil society conservation organizations. In 1988, I created with Gretel Aguilar, which is now the head of IUCN, and she's with us in this assembly, a small NGO called Pro Rios, which means pro rivers, trying to stop big dams in Costa Rica. And we were 5 guys. And we were fighting the biggest utility company in Central America, which generated a lot of progress because that same company generated electricity and gave energy to everybody. So very well known, very respected, huge organization or utility company. And there were these groups of small people complaining about the environmental impact of big dams. And it took us 20 years, but we stopped the 3 dams. So I was there. I even camped for 3 weeks as a protest in the dam site. And so I know what these people do. I've been there. I've been in the front lines of change and confrontation with logging companies. I also had a lot of engagement with the logging companies, so I know about it. And the same way that I was able to succeed in changing policies and changing the vision of the people in my country, Costa Rica, the same thing the GEF needs to do at the global level. So we will never achieve any sustainable progress if we only concentrate providing funding to governments, which is critical, instrumental, and the most important thing. But at the same time, we need to become the biggest provider of financial support to civil society. Otherwise, we will never achieve the progress. Look outside this venue, forest fires all over the place. That means that we need to think out of the box. The GEF needs to think out of the box. The GEF needs to become the most important strategic financial partner of civil society, because we've been talking about the role of civil society, and civil society is still in the bleachers, looking at others, taking decisions that have major implications for them and the next generation.
Thank you. We asked our participants what their hopes and expectations for the future were, and that's a really big ask. It's a big question. I'm curious what yours are. It could be, if you need to sum it up like in an image or a metaphor, you can, but I'm curious what your hopes and expectations for the future are.
Well, I'm a rational optimist.
That's good. Me too.
My optimism is based on data and evidence, and there's a system change. But the system is changing very slowly. And we can accelerate the change if we strategically invest in the youth. And this is in the center of what should be discussed in the political forums, which is that that major investment. I think that the GEF can be a facilitator of the generational change because the youth today are going to be the decision makers in 2050. The decision makers in government, in the corporate sector, in private sector, in the NGOs, they will be the decision makers in 2050. And they will have a very hot situation if we don't invest in that transition, in accelerating that transition and preparing and training them. So for me, the global challenge is not, this traditional geopolitical challenge within the North, the global North and global South. It is a challenge within generation. My generation, who is in power today with the next generation, and my generation definitely has compromised the future of the youth. So in that respect, the GEF can play a catalyzer role in accelerating, training, and promoting, and that is why the GEF, in the context of the 5 conventions that we work, we will concentrate in ways by which we can provide strategic financial support to civil society, in particular the youth, the women, and indigenous communities, local communities. Without that, we will see those forest fires or those droughts and those hurricanes coming and going as something of every single day.
Thank you so much. I salute this decision of the GEF and yours to make inclusion, equity, diversity such a priority for this 7th Assembly. I think it is really important.
And inclusion is not just people. It's more than that. Because we are just the dominant species in this planet. Mm-hmm. And in this planet, there have been many other dominant species who has come and gone. And Mother Nature doesn't need us. And Mother Nature, can make us disappear like many times it has happened, and I don't want that to happen. So I strongly believe that the inclusiveness should bring values and principles associated to our responsibilities with other species in this planet. In a very simplistic manner, this planet, there is a dictatorship in this planet by one species, which is the humans. So we need to see inclusiveness in that context and be able to see all possible actors being part of the solution. Civil society cannot continue to be in the bleachers, and we, the politicians, the policymakers, need to walk the talk and mobilize financial resources to where higher impact can be generated.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us this morning and taking the time to come be part of this partnership forum. Before you go, we have something very special to share with you and with the audience. Louis Pugh, the UNEP patron of the oceans, who has pioneered swims in the most challenging environments on Earth, is currently swimming 300 miles down the length of the Hudson River in New York State. He has sent this message to you and to the GEF Assembly. Here's a little video.
Hi everybody in Vancouver. It's wonderful to be able to speak to you today. My name is Louis Pugh. I'm an endurance swimmer and I also serve as the UN Patron of the Oceans. I've been swimming now for over 30 years, and what I try to do is I try to swim in some of the most vulnerable parts of our world and then afterwards try to get them protected. And so some of the swims I've undertaken, well, I did the first swim across the North Pole. You could imagine how cold that water was, just to talk about how the sea ice in the Arctic is melting so much. I also last year did a swim right the way across the Red Sea. So from Saudi Arabia all the way across to Egypt, across some of the most incredible coral reefs in the world. But as you know, these coral reefs now are very vulnerable because of rising water temperatures. A few years ago, I also did a swim right the way down south in Antarctica, in the Ross Sea. You imagine swimming down there. There are humpback whales, there are emperor penguins. It's a beautiful place, but it was under risk. And so I went down there and I did a swim there to help establish the creation of the largest protected area in the world. Now behind me, you'll see an incredibly beautiful river. This is the Hudson River in Northeast America. And it's one of the most incredible rivers in the world. I mean, which river starts high up in a wilderness area where there are turkey vultures, beavers and bears, and ends in one of the greatest cities on this earth? And the reason why I'm doing this swim is to highlight just how important it is that we protect our rivers. Rivers are the arteries of our planet. We simply cannot have a healthy planet without clean, healthy rivers. Now, finally, I would like to thank Carlos Manuel Rodriguez and the GEF for giving me an opportunity to share my message today, but also for the work which you do on a daily basis. There is no ways that we are going to be able to protect this beautiful world of ours unless we can get finance to grassroots levels in order to protect our beautiful rivers, our forests, our mountains, and this very, very precious planet. So thank you very, very much, and I wish all of you in Vancouver a very, very successful and insightful and collaborative conference. All the best from the Hudson River.
Thank you. What a beautiful video. Thank you to Louis Pugh for this message and this beautiful video. This is the end of our first segment called Setting the Stage for Change. I think some of us have quick remarks that they would like to give, and then we're going to play a little bit of a game of a musical chair and change around with our next panelists.
I would like to say that there is no doubt that every young person who's sitting in this room is being proactive and doing what they can to help solve the challenges that we're facing today, representing the different youth networks that we're coming from. And we are asking that you partner with us and meet us where we are so that we can collectively solve the environmental challenges we are facing today.
Okay. I just want to say we need have a lot of space to listen from indigenous women, Afro-descendant, and local women. It's not really feasible. And there's a lot of policy and partnership, even to direct access to funding. It's just step begin. And we want to GEF Assembly taking this is a part of their concern to biodiversity and sustainable life. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give it up one more time for Ms. Daca, Ms. Angreni, Ms. Rabukawaka, Mr. Sano, and Carlos Manuel Rodriguez for joining us for this segment, Setting the Stage for Change. All right, I would now like to invite the panelists of the intergenerational chat to please come and join me on stage in these beautiful armchairs. We have Miss Mary Jane Enshill, Deputy Chief Executive Officer at the Hara Foundation, Yungo, Ghana. Miss Damaris Fabiola Kijifix Monson, GEF Small Grants Program Youth Guarantee from Guatemala. Ms. Kwaakas Dustin Moore, Indigenous Climate and Policy Advisor, VIDIA, Canada. Mr. Peter MacDougall, Assistant Deputy Minister for Global Issues and the Development at Global Affairs Canada. And Ms. Grethel Aguilar, Director General ad interim, International Union for Conservation of Nature. And Mr. Yemi Katarere, African Civil Society Biodiversity Alliance. So the original title for this conversation was Intergenerational Fireside Chat. Fires throughout the history of mankind have been ways for people to get together, for ceremonies to be had, for stories to be told. I want to acknowledge that when I say the word fire right now, for me, and probably for many of you, there's so many emotions that come, especially as we are currently under a state of emergency here in British Columbia. There are multiple wildfires happening. Communities are displaced. 1,300 hectares of Canadian forests have burnt this year only. So while I want to acknowledge the devastating and difficult reality of the wildfires, I want us to use our imagination and go back to this image of a bonfire as a way for people to connect and to tell stories, okay? Does that work for everyone? Okay. I'd love to do a quick icebreaker game with you. I'd love for us to imagine a bonfire in front of us. It's warm, it's cozy. And I want us to stoke the fire with a word. And it's just a way for us to check in with one another. We really want this to be a conversation. So the word that you choose represents how you're feeling right now. It could be an image, a feeling. It doesn't need to be serious. It could be silly. Just one word that represents how you're feeling right now. I'm going to start with my imaginary log, and I will stoke this beautiful imaginary fire we have in front of us. And my word is butterflies. Whenever you're ready, you can have your word join in this imaginary fire.
I will add empathy.
Yo voy a agregar amor.
I will add, can you hear me? I will add friendship.
Inspiration.
Energy.
Collaboration.
Wow, I have shivers. Thank you so much for this, for participating in this little icebreaker. It was really interesting to hear personal stories from our participants in setting the stage for change. And I'm curious what your story is, a story from your past or your childhood that is connected to your ongoing commitment to the environment. It's a way for us in this assembly to get to know our participants. Why do they choose to do what they do? What drives them? So whenever you're ready, share a short story.
Okay, good morning. So my name is Mary Jane Angel. I'm a Ghanaian, and I come from the central region and part of the Volta region of Ghana. I'm the deputy CEO at Hatov Foundation. Hatov is a community of young professionals that are trying to create a better world for our current and future generations. And I'm also being the director and board member of the Global Climate Youth Action Fund. And so I would say that my journey was quite interesting. I didn't grow up with environmental protection in mind. No, I didn't have an idea of what environmental protection meant. Even though I know environmental protection did existed in norms and traditions and taboos, they will say, my grandmother will say that don't step in this water. I mean, when we're going to the farm, don't step in the water. Just because she knows there's someone at the end of the stream who would need clean water. So if you step in it, you were going to pollute the water. So that was how they were trying to conserve the resources. So how I got into this space actually started when somewhere in 2011, when I was working as an intern journalist in one of our media houses. So I was assigned to attend an environmental training workshop. At the time, as a journalist, I thought I was just going to cover the events and then come back home and tell the story as it is, not putting myself in the story, but just reporting. But when I got there, it was a training program for journalists to understand the issue of environmental degradation. So one presentation by the Chief Executive Officer of the Hatov Foundation, and then who then was the regional focal point for the GEF CSO network in West Africa, touched on some impressive, I shouldn't say impressive, the urgency for environmental protection, how devastating the environmental consequences was going to be for us in Ghana. And then he also touched on how the GEF was supporting the countries to address some of the environmental degradation. So in that meeting, I realized how important it is to protect the environment, first of all. And then I asked myself, how was I going to do this? I remembered quickly that I'm a journalist. And then we know the journalist is the fourth estate of the realm, okay? We are able to, we have the capacity to advocate, and then also we have the ability to influence political issues. So it was time for me to run with this message and make the general public know of this issue. But then, how was I going to be able to do that? I was then in school again, so I tried to now concentrate my dissertation at that moment to the extent of environmental reporting in our media. I wanted to know how the media was reporting on environment. So the research, at the end of the day, I realized there was a low environmental issues reported. I used my own media house as an example, as a case study, and then one of the national media houses. So I used 2 media houses as a case study to understand how the issues of environment is discussed in the media. And it was very, very low. So I decided to take it upon myself. But again, you see, if you want to take something upon yourself, you need to also get the understanding of the issues. I didn't just want to be a signboard to say that, okay, something is happening, is wrong, and you are showing the way, this is how you need to address it. No, I wanted to be part of the solution. So I then decided to volunteer at Hatto Foundation to understand the issues very well. And by dates of hard work, through volunteering, I became the programs officer. I was employed as a programs officer, and gradually I became the deputy CEO at Hatto Foundation. Yes. So I want to give it up to the Chief Executive Officer of Hatto Foundation, who gave me the training, the volunteering opportunity to learn from there, and subsequently become the Chief Executive Officer, deputizing for him. And we are doing wonderful things back in Ghana and across the continent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Enschel. Yes. Let's move on to Ms. Dustin Moore.
Thank you. Han Squash, Squackwash. Good morning. My name is Squackwash, or Sunshine. I am a Nickel and Yakima youth from Kumshin, also known as Lytton, here in British Columbia, just about 4 hours north. It's interesting with all the fire mentions this morning. I call it my villain origin story, actually started by a fire. So if anyone's not aware of Lytton, about 2 years ago, it was engulfed by a wildfire, burning 90% of the community. And currently, right now, it actually has 5 active wildfires. Half of my family is evacuated, the other half is on alert. So me being here in person, I can say my mind, my spirit, and my heart is back home with my community. And I say that, and I acknowledge that, because youth are consistently having to sacrifice themselves to be in these positions. We are consistently having to talk about our trauma on panels like this for decision makers to hear that we need action. That being said, I am the Indigenous Climate and Policy Advisor with VIDEA. I am also the co-chair of the Environment and Climate Change Youth Council. In those positions, I've had immense opportunities to speak with decision makers, negotiators, and try to influence some change, and I really hope that I have been. But really pushing for the decolonization of how we view, speak, and write climate policy. I really push for this because in my community of Lytton and other small, remote, and rural communities, specifically indigenous ones, we do not have the capacity to rebuild quickly. Like, we don't have the capacity to find the funding. There's all those processes, and we're seeing that more in Canada now. Many other countries have been facing those obstacles for decades now, and now it's in our backyard. I also want to bring up, I mentioned empathy earlier, because from what I've been witnessing, and when we're talking about climate change, you also have to talk about the core of how climate change have happened, and that is colonialism, the patriarchy. And with the patriarchy, it's the lack of empathy that has led us to climate change. So when I'm saying empathy, it's one, bringing feelings back into the conversation, which is really tough because being vulnerable is scary. And to all the panelists up here, I know I've heard some of you speak, and you're always so vulnerable, and I appreciate that. And I know yesterday in sessions I was in as well, being vulnerable, bringing those feelings back is making so much more change than I think that it's acknowledged for. I guess just to end this, because I've been thinking about this a lot more, if you follow me on social media, you have been seeing that I've been saying I am pissed off. And I think that is a very accurate description for many young people, being angry about what is happening. Because our whole lives have been taken up by multiple climate crises, biodiversity crisis, the plastic crisis, and our feelings are very valid. Anger is very valid. There's nothing wrong with anger. And that's often dismissed in these kind of conversations. And I just want to let the grown-ups, the decision makers, I want you all to know when we are angry, when we are passionate, we're not angry with you. We're not getting mad at you. We're angry with the system that was put in place. And we're just asking to be a part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dunstan-Moore, for your generous testimony and for being vulnerable and angry and at the same time so well-spoken. So I really appreciate. Let's move to Ms. Kijifix Monzon.
Buenos días. Para mí es un gusto estar acá el día de hoy, contarles de dónde vengo. Mi nombre es Damaris Fabiola Kijifix Monzon. Vengo del Valle Palajunó, Quetzaltenango, Guatemala. Para mí, mi comunidad se llama Palajunó, que significa la cara del conocimiento. Quiero comentarles que yo vengo de una familia indígena maya quiché, que estamos trabajando y luchando para nuestro pueblo. Soy hija mayor, tengo 5 hermanos y todos muy encantados en participar en la organización. Mi organización que empezamos a fundar desde el 2018 se llama Asociación de Guías de Turismo Comunitario Explorando el Valle. El nombre nació Explorando el Valle por medio de una gran problemática que se vive en nuestra comunidad, que es la extracción de tierras. Entonces, muchos de nuestros vecinos o comunidad está sufriendo por la contaminación ambiental. Y entonces dijimos, no más licencias ambientales para destrucción. Entonces colocamos Explorando el Valle porque vamos a explorar como jóvenes de la manera positiva para poder rescatar, poder velar por nuestra comunidad. Entonces nosotros venimos como jóvenes, éramos un grupo de 12 jóvenes que estábamos viendo todas esas problemáticas y también las necesidades que pasan en nuestra comunidad. En el 2012, en una tormenta, mi comunidad fue inundada. Mi escuela de infancia se inundó y se perdieron materiales y equipos. Entonces, desde ahí empecé a ver que nuestra comunidad está siendo afectada. Mi padre también es líder en la comunidad. Entonces, ellos empezaron a luchar para que estas extracciones ya no se den más licencias, pero ellos fueron denunciados y demandados por los empresarios. Entonces, desde ahí yo vi que también nosotros como jóvenes nos tenemos que unir con nuestros padres, con nuestros abuelos, para luchar y defender nuestro territorio. Entonces, nosotros como jóvenes empezamos a juntarnos y unir nuestras ideas, que somos capaces de poder defender nuestro territorio. Ahí empezó Explorando el Valle. Empezamos a decir que vamos a hacer guías comunitarios y conocer toda nuestra tierra. Les comento, para empezar la organización tuvimos que explorar todas nuestras montañas y nuestros volcanes primero, conocer nuestra sangre natal. Ahí fue que descubrimos a través de nuestros abuelos y padres que hay mucha historia y también dolor que nuestros padres y abuelos han pasado. Entonces nosotros como organización empezamos a ver, defender y poder contribuir al cambio de nuestros bosques. Se están perdiendo especies nativas, se están perdiendo conocimientos ancestrales y estamos perdiendo lo que es nuestra indumentaria maya, que hoy lo traigo portado. Para mí es una bendición ser del pueblo maya quiché. Y entonces nosotros como jóvenes empezamos a reunirnos y no nos quedamos solamente como una organización de jóvenes unidos, sino que nos fuimos más allá. Dijimos, fundemos nuestra ONG y que desde nuestra comunidad podemos trabajar. Sabemos las necesidades, hemos sabido las problemáticas, es decir, que no solamente vamos a paliar esas necesidades, sino que vamos a tener cambios sostenibles, donde no solamente se termina un proyecto, sino que sigue avanzando y tenemos que seguir fortaleciendo. Gracias al programa Pequeñas Donaciones, que fueron para nosotros nuestros primeros padrinos en decir, le apostamos con el proyecto que ustedes nos están presentando. Cuando nosotros escuchamos que sí fue aprobado nuestro proyecto, para nosotros fue una gran alegría. Fue en el 2020, ustedes muchos saben qué pasó en el 2020. Ahora, ¿qué hacemos si nosotros no somos jóvenes universitarios? En ese entonces estaba terminando la secundaria y mis compañeros empezando secundaria. No sabemos bien cómo era todo el tema financiero, pero también nosotros los jóvenes llevamos en la sangre todo ese talento, todo ese descubrimiento del mundo. Entonces empezamos a capacitarnos. Hay muchos medios para capacitarnos. Es cierto, nuestra comunidad está un poquito lejana a la ciudad, pero no fue un obstáculo. Nosotros fuimos, investigamos y empezamos a capacitarnos. También gracias al acompañamiento que nos dieron, tanto financiero y también todo técnico. Empezamos nosotros a formar a nuestros propios técnicos comunitarios para que cuando finaliza el proyecto, que es de 1 año, estos técnicos se quedan en la comunidad, seguir trabajando. Ahora, cuando empezamos el proyecto, solamente iniciamos 5 ejecutándolo. Ahora tenemos a 15 jóvenes más enfrente para ejecutar varios proyectos y varias actividades. Ahora también, como nosotros de parte de la ONG que está creciendo no tenemos fondos para salarios, yo tuve que gestionar para que otra organización le apueste, le dé incentivos a los jóvenes y nosotros seamos la escuela de aprendizaje de doble vía, porque ellos aprenden y también nosotros aprendemos de ellos. Entonces así es como viene mi historia. Así soy Fabiola, que he venido trabajando como primero representante, ahora directora de la ONG. Gracias a todos los que le han apostado a la juventud, nosotros somos talentosos, lo llevamos en la sangre. ¿Por qué no lo hagamos cuando somos desde jóvenes? ¿Por qué a veces nos dejan atrás, verdad? Si también nosotros logramos descubrir desde ahora. Ahora también coordino con las escuelas de mi comunidad, porque ahí está el talento desde los niños. Que los sueños de ellos no solamente se queden sueños, que también se hagan realidad, como lo está haciendo lo mío. Así que también estoy coordinando con ellos. Estamos reforestando, estamos trabajando con mujeres. Trabajamos con mujeres con proyectos de recursos del mismo bosque. Trabajamos con plantas medicinales y ya trabajamos ahora el producto de tés. Ahora, para el COVID-19, nosotros también coordinamos con nuestras abuelas comadronas, curanderas, y entonces nuestra comunidad no fue tan afectada como otros pueblos. Es por eso que nosotros los jóvenes nos acercamos más, ¿verdad?, a todo el tema ancestral, para que no perdamos nuestras raíces y que desde ahí tenemos todo el remedio, desde el pensamiento hasta el cuerpo, hasta el alma. Nosotros a través del bosque podemos encontrar todo ese espíritu que nosotros queremos descubrir. Entonces yo les agradezco por el espacio.
Muchísimas gracias, Fabiola, para compartir con nosotros esas palabras y para decirnos un poquito más sobre su comunidad. Let's hear from Mr. McDougall.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter McDougall. I'm Assistant Deputy Minister with Global Affairs Canada, where I'm responsible for all Canada's multilateral development and humanitarian assistance. Most importantly, for the purpose of this meeting this week, also for Canada's climate finance and new biodiversity program. I would like to acknowledge that we are currently meeting on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. Même si la cérémonie d'ouverture se déroule ce soir, je veux, au nom du gouvernement du Canada, vous souhaiter la bienvenue ici, au Canada, à Vancouver, pour cette assemblée très importante, 7e assemblée du GEF. My own story is my experiences starts with 25 years as a public servant, as a diplomat with the Government of Canada. I've worked directly and indirectly on climate and environment issues only really for the last 6 years. As a Canadian ambassador to Jordan, I worked on a portfolio of projects helping Jordanian communities adapt to climate change, protecting areas from desertification, and then for the past 3 years, excuse me, overseeing Canada's $1 billion a year climate finance program. And as many of you will know, last December at COP15, Prime Minister Trudeau announced a new biodiversity program for $350 million, and so my team and I are very busily starting to launch that. But it's really my personal background that informs my passion and my commitment to this work. So I actually come from a community very close to Summer here in British Columbia, which is called Boston Bar. It's about a half an hour north of where Summer comes from. And I grew up there in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. Certainly developed a great passion for outdoor life there. I grew up beside a forest. My playground, if you like, were the creeks and rivers of that area. It's a community with a large indigenous population. I shouldn't say large, it's a community with an indigenous population. The overall community is only about 1,000 people. But it's a community that is highly dependent on natural resources. A community that depended on forestry and on fishing. And so for the first 10 years of my working career, I worked in the forest industry. I worked as a logger, I worked as a tree planter, and I fought forest fires. And that was predominantly in the 1980s. And that certainly exposed me to the many challenges that communities face, the trade-offs that you have to make between livelihoods for communities, between protecting nature and biodiversity. These are very real challenges for communities that are solely dependent on natural resources, and I got to see that up close. I think one of the things that strikes me most profoundly coming back to British Columbia this year for the first time in quite a long time, is the change in fires. Now, many people have spoken about it, and I can say that as a forest firefighter in the 1980s, you would never see fires of this scale. We had expert small crews that would go in and attack small fires, and they would be over. The shift in, from climate change, the extreme weather patterns we're seeing really has a profound effect on communities, not only the issues that Summer spoke about in terms of trauma and rebuilding, but also for livelihoods. And so that's really what I come to this work from that sense of the importance of biodiversity and nature for our communities, but also the importance of it for our daily lives. For your example of this bonfire was really a great one, because it's the sort of natural elements that reinvigorate us. Just yesterday, I was on Texada Island with my family, and we took a walk through an old-growth forest, and it is such a powerful, restorative feeling and emotion that you get from that. So that's what I bring to this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Yes. Let's move on to Ms. Grethel Aguilar.
Muchas gracias. Thank you. So, what am I here? I come from a very humble but strong family composed by many women. So I have been always surrounded by grandmothers, my mother, my two sisters, my aunts, and they have shown me many things. First, this sense of being in a group of women, strong women, but also I remember that, when we could, we went out for the vacation or for the celebration, and always the selected place was a forest or going to the ocean. And I remember myself when I was very little, speaking in my mind to the ocean, saying, I will be back. Remember me, I will be back. And also to the trees, like I was so amazed by these huge trees. I'm from Costa Rica. So, and I will look at the tree, like, you're so tall, you're so big, I will be back, So I grew up like that. And then education also played a very important part of the reasons I am here. In Costa Rica, public education is of a good quality. So I was able to go to kindergarten and school, primary school, and so on. And I remember always that part of the classes was, you need to care for nature. And not just because nature is amazing and is beautiful and it gives us inspiration, but also because nature was basically, and still is, a very important part of Costa Rican economy. People depend on nature. I mean, from our first product in the economy is tourism. Tourism come to see nature. So from the drivers to the hotel owners to the communities, we depend on people coming to see our beautiful country. So I knew that. So I wanted two things. I wanted to help, to serve, and to support people. And then I wanted to go back to nature, because that was what was in my mind since the beginning, And so I decided to study law. And law because I wanted to support many people, but knowing that I wanted to go back to nature. So my first job when I graduated as a lawyer was to go and work in a remote part of my country with indigenous peoples. And that changed my life forever. I thought that I was going to help. We lawyers, we always think that we're the ones who will help. But actually, I was helped by them. I was taken through a journey that marked my life. I went there to support as a lawyer in litigations because some of the indigenous peoples were being taken to jail by cutting the trees, which of course those trees were to build houses, not nothing else. But then I learned through them to appreciate even more nature, to respect nature, to believe that we are part of nature. And I also saw the challenges, like you. I saw the challenges, and I saw the opportunities. And I learned that we humans, we are part of one single ecosystem. We are not separate. So my hope for supporting, helping, and going back to nature was realized at that moment, but it was also the beginning of my journey.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Aguilar. I'm so thrilled to know that other people are talking to the oceans and to trees because I do that all the time. And also, I just want to say, as somebody who has volunteered for on an indigenous reserve in Panama in 2006, I do understand that feeling of like you're going to help, but actually no, you're the one learning, right? So it's really interesting to hear what you just say, because it's, I feel like that's where the exchange is happening. Learning that we're giving as much as receiving. Yeah. What about you, Mr. Yemi Katerere?
No, thank you, and good morning, everybody. I first want to acknowledge and to thank you for welcoming us on these indigenous territories. It's a privilege to be here. My name is Yemi Katerere. I'm from Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe became independent in 1980. And so I grew up under a colonial regime, characterized by land appropriation away from local people, and giving large tracts of lands to settler farmers. So my connection to nature was about accessing food. That was my relationship to nature. Harvesting wild vegetables, harvesting wild fruits, being able to fish. And what the colonial system did was to actually deny that access to these natural foods. And so growing up, I became what is called a poacher, became an illegal harvester of natural foods, and suffering the indignity of being chased off these farms that had been taken over by settlers. And so it made me aware of the importance of how do we decolonize the whole narrative of conservation. The issues of inequity, the issues of the rights to access to nutritional food, rights to access to land, and those kinds of issues. So that's my, my connection to nature and my story. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes. Now that we've gotten to know each other a little bit better and that you've gotten to know our panelists a little bit better, I'm going to ask a second question. And the second question is twofold. So for the younger generation, I want you to imagine, propel yourself into the future, 20, 30 years from now, and to share with us what role you hope to have played in helping to shape a more sustainable and inclusive future. And then for the more experienced generation, I'm curious if you could go back in the past. Imagine yourself as a 20-something-year-old environmental activist, or early on in your career. What's an advice you would like to give to yourself at that time? So we don't have to do orders, like whoever wants to speak first should go. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
You can go, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So for me, looking back at where I came from to be in this process and considering where I am now and what I hope for is that generally, I will put this into three perspectives. And the first one is going to be a general one, what I hope for. And that's for everyone on the streets of Accra or Ghana and then in Africa, appreciating what environmental devastation means to them. And then also, beyond that, they should be able to now personalize environmental protection, sustainable development, and climate change adaptation and mitigation their own way. Beyond that, once they are able to get the awareness of these issues clearly, we should be able to get to a point in our political discourse where we are not just voting for anybody, but then we are going to vote for governments that have clear, sustainable agenda for the countries that we all come from. That is what I envisage through the advocacy work that I'm doing. That at the end of the day, once you become aware of environmental degradation and the challenges it poses to you, your future, the current, and then the unborn ones, you should be able to know where or who the leader that is coming to, who I'm giving my sovereignty to, that person, who that person has to be. So that's the first thing generally that I'd want to see. And then secondly, on the youth front, I want to see my replica. I want to see myself replicated in a lot of young people who will be very passionate about environmental protection and who will also take center stage in environmental protection or conservation. Why am I saying this? Usually we hear that the youth are the future leaders. I don't believe in that statement. Future leaders. I'm a youth. I'm the deputy CEO of a whole NGO back in Ghana. I'm a youth. I'm not in the future. I'm in the present. I see my children being the future generation, and that I want to leave a system where they also enjoy the same things that I enjoyed, or even better. So I don't want the youth to see their positions or their inclusiveness being postponed, but I want them to see themselves as now leaders. I mean, fantastic from our lady here, what she's doing. She's a young person, but contributing to the solutions. She's not waiting to be in the leadership role or to be a minister or president or anybody to be able to do that. So, I mean, we should see ourselves now. That's how I want to see I hope to achieve. And then also, within the political front, I want our leaders to, by 30 years or 20 years' time, to come to the agreement that they can trust us. I mean, we shouldn't even wait. We need to be trusted as young people who can do something for the sustainability of the country or the world. We have a lot of energy. We are very innovative, okay? So, I mean, why can't we all be together in this game? And as an adult who knows what you did wrong, and me being the young person who is learning from you, we can hold hands. Once you tell me what you did wrong and the implications, I can also tell you that, okay, with the innovative ideas I have, this is how we can all forge partnership together. So that's how I want to see it. And then with our global leaders who are making or taking the decisions, I want us to respect our moral and cultural values in decision making. Okay, we should know that we are all coming from different backgrounds, with different cultures, with different belief systems. Our social constructs are different based on our own experiences. And so in taking decisions, can we give room for cultural diversity? Can we also give room for some kind of moral discourse in what we're doing? I mean, if you're taking the resources from a poor community to enrich yourself, at the end of the day, you come back to say that, okay,
can you do things differently when you are not doing things differently? Is it morally right? So I wanted to see that kind of discussion or that, moral thinking in our decision-making process in years to come. And I think it can start now and not wait till the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So we don't need to postpone intergenerational collaboration. It should start happening today. Who's ready to speak next?
I can jump in.
Yeah.
Ideally, I would love to be living a slow life. I grew up on a farm. I would love to be gardening, raising goats. But with the current state of the world, even 20, 30 years from now, I know that's not realistic. Realistically, I will hopefully not be on stage. I'll be in the negotiating seat, continuing to advocate and fight in a more decision-making power of climate policies, ensuring that Indigenous rights are upheld and respected within those, and making space for youth, because I won't be a youth no more. But I do hope that when there are youth in those spaces, it's not on like trauma-based, it's not violent, it's not experiencing these climate events. It's them implementing and feeling safe and not having the mental drainage that it is now. It's coming from a place of moving forward, I guess I could say in a way. And I'm holding on to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunshine. Yes, so the fact that youth voices deserve a place at the table just as much as others. Thank you so much.
Sigo yo.
Go ahead.
¿Sí? Bueno, yo siempre he soñado, no he soñado, ser real. Lo que voy a hacer es seguir trabajando en la comunidad, estar como, sé que soy líder, pero quiero estar en la junta de los abuelos para poder también tomar las decisiones que pensamos nosotros los jóvenes. También estar en redes. He venido trabajando en redes locales, pero quiero también estar en redes internacionales para poder que también se escuchen las voces de las comunidades más lejanas, ¿verdad? También creo que hay políticas que a veces se realizan en nuestro país y no se lleva a cabo, como se dice, solamente está escrito. Entonces hay que trabajar para que se haga. Hacer intercambios con los jóvenes, aquí hay mucha experiencia, ¿verdad? Cada pueblo tiene su cultura, tiene todo, pero se avanza más si nos unimos, hacemos esfuerzos, que todo el esfuerzo que estamos trabajando se pueda dar a conocer. Y creo, como decía, no es copiar, es hacerlo algo nuevo en nuestra comunidad, ¿verdad? Experiencias de un grupo hacia el otro, se hacen nuevas cosas. Entonces, quiero trabajar con eso, ¿verdad? Mi equipo de jóvenes siempre venimos también trabajando como nuevas cosas innovadoras, pero nunca olvidar todas las cosas ancestrales. Este sábado, por ejemplo, mi equipo empezó, nosotros hacemos el turismo también, pero el turismo comunitario, y ahora vamos a trabajar lo que es la cocina de los abuelos, ¿verdad? ¿Por qué no recordar todo ese sabor, ese sazón que ellos tienen? Entonces nosotros estamos trabajando para que todo esto se rescate, que no se olvide. Y también trabajamos con todas las terapias sensoriales del bosque, ¿verdad? ¿Cómo me siento yo estar en la ciudad y cómo yo me siento estar en el bosque, ¿verdad? Entonces estamos trabajando eso porque también en nuestra comunidad hay turismo, pero no es un turismo el que quiere, llegue y que haga lo que tenga que hacer. Nosotros estamos luchando para que nuestras autoridades, ellos puedan poder velar, ¿verdad? Porque como decían, es triste ver el bosque que se está consumiendo y se está quemando. No solamente estamos perdiendo lo que son árboles, estamos perdiendo toda la fauna y toda la flora, ¿verdad? El año pasado nosotros tuvimos un incendio forestal en uno de nuestros volcanes, se llama Volcán Santa María, es el volcán más visitado, pero verlo quemando, o sea, es una volcán mujer. O sea, ¿cómo veo yo, cómo estoy yo ayudando a las mujeres entonces, que si desde mi volcán lo estoy destruyendo? Entonces, quiero seguir trabajando con las mujeres para que ellas se sienten empoderadas, seguras, ¿verdad? Lo estamos trabajando desde mi equipo como jóvenes, una equidad de género, ¿verdad? Porque no sé, en las comunidades cuesta ver eso, ¿verdad? De que siempre el que va a dirigir va a ser un hombre. Pero nosotras las mujeres también tenemos toda la capacidad y decisión. Entonces nosotros como jóvenes venimos no a hacer competencia con el otro género, sino trabajar en conjunto, ¿verdad? Entonces estamos trabajando eso con el equipo y la verdad me siento muy respaldada con el equipo de trabajo que tengo, ¿verdad? Nosotros, como decimos, sabemos que el que nos da todo este discernimiento pues es Dios, ¿verdad? Y creo que es el guía de nosotros principalmente y nosotros seguimos atrás porque cuidar esa creación que Él nos da. Nosotros los seres humanos a veces nos desviamos, nos olvidamos de lo que tenemos alrededor. Nosotros si vamos al bosque y respiramos es lo más bonito. A mí me encanta hacerlo eso en la mañana, los domingos, ir en bicicleta y ver las aves, escucharlo. O sea, es llenarme de todo ese estrés que a veces nosotros sufrimos que trabajamos, ¿verdad? Qué bonito es llegar en el bosque, escuchar las aves. Entonces quiero seguir trabajando, estar en las juntas de los abuelos y también estar en estos espacios, ¿verdad? Seguir trabajando, darles a conocer lo que estamos trabajando. Como les digo, no llevamos muchos años de trabajo, pero sí soñamos trabajar más años para poder ser sostenible lo que estamos haciendo. Sabemos que hay aves que se están perdiendo, pero podemos todavía seguir trabajando para poder rescatar. Yo a veces les digo a mis compañeros, si la tierra hablara, tal vez llorando hablaría, porque a veces nosotros los seres humanos, como nosotros nos desahogamos con lágrimas, la tierra también da sus lágrimas a través de todas las erupciones que a veces vemos en los volcanes o a veces decimos desastres. No son desastres, es todo la contaminación que nosotros los seres humanos estamos haciendo. Ellos solamente se desahogan de esa manera, ¿verdad? Entonces eso pienso hacer en 30 años. Yo quiero ver más aves que se están perdiendo, todos los árboles que están en mi comunidad nos están sembrando. Nosotros como jóvenes lo estamos haciendo desde nuestro vivero, nuestro jardín. Entonces nosotros le apostamos que en 10 años podemos ver nuevas especies nativas en nuestra comunidad.
Gracias, Fabiola. Me gusta esta imagen de las lágrimas de la madre tierra. Y, sí, el enojo.
Thank you. It's hard for me to imagine myself as an environmental activist in my 20s since I wasn't, but I was active on other political issues. But I would say this, it's not as if when I was involved in clear-cut logging or replanting monoculture trees that I didn't question those practices. It's more that I didn't do much about them. And so what I would say to my 20-something self is, you know, that the status quo is sometimes right, but not always. And so what I would say to my 20-something self is to more consistently challenge the status quo practices. And the way in which you do that, of course, is you rarely succeed in changing the status quo alone. You do it through what we're doing today. You do it through building networks. You do it through building partnerships. And you do it by engaging in politics. And by politics, I mean, of course, also formal electoral politics, but also through civil society organizations. These are often the leading voices of change on any particular issue, not least, of course, biodiversity and nature. And so, looking back, I would certainly challenge myself to have done more of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I was an activist
at 20. I was trying to stop a dam because the dam was going to be built in one of the most pristine rivers in Costa Rica, the Pacuare River. And yes, I was brave and with a lot of energy and very bold. But if I have to tell the young Gretel an advice, I will give her an advice. No? Now, after so many years, I'm not going to disclose my age, but it has been a long time. I will tell her, first of all, that it's important to listen and to work into an intergenerational way, to hear all the different views from all the different ages and wisdoms, because we all have something to learn from each other. And I was very sure that I was right, no? Because that's the age when you really believe that whatever you say is correct. So I will tell her to listen and to work in an intergenerational way. The other thing that I will tell her is, don't worry, gender equity will come, no? I was really taken by Damari's words, because I remember in so many occasions that I was the only woman young in the room, and it was tough like hell. No? People will look at me like, she know nothing, or what is she doing here? I remember going to one of the meetings, and I will knock at the door, and they will say, yes, and I will say, is this the room of the meeting? Yes, but we're not receiving students now. Things like that. So I will tell her to continue to be brave, trust that things will change, and keep pushing for gender equity. That, for me, it will be very important, and assure her that things will be fine, that she will grow up, that working hard and keep believing and pushing, she will be at the right place.
Thank you so much. This is very inspiring. Believing that you belong in that room, right, as a young person. Great, thank you.
So, as I look back and think about the advice that I would give, I think the first thing that I would say is, to be successful, you need to be confident. You need to believe in your passion, and you need to pursue that passion. And that the key to confidence is preparation. If you're not prepared, you're going to fail. So that's really important as a young person, to always be prepared. The other advice I would give is that as a young person, you need to be embedded in your community, in the society, and to make a contribution in terms of addressing real-life issues and problems that are confronted by the society, by the community, and to be grounded in reality. The other thing is, you need to be inquisitive. You need to be curious. You need to be able to ask questions. And I think that if you're not curious and if you're not asking questions, then it's really difficult to move forward. One of the greatest values that is taught by life is humility. And that would be advice that I would give, because it ties up with what you're saying. If you have humility, you listen. You hear what others are saying. You accept your mistakes if you have humility. Because I know growing up, you're always right. You have the answers, and you have a level of arrogance and so on. So humility is really, really important, and it makes you approachable, as a leader. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Carrere. This has been really inspiring to hear everyone speak and to see the differences too between, and the similarities, should I say, and the words of advice, and also to feel the passion that has, you know, your passion for your ongoing commitment to the environment. It's already 11 o'clock, but I don't want to leave until I pick your brain, and I'm going to ask to keep this short. Try to make it one sentence or less. If there was one thing that you could share with this assembly and with all of us, one thing that you can or want to do differently to support greater intergenerational collaboration, because I think we understood, and I think all of you understand, that it is a path towards a more inclusive and sustainable future, what would you do? Or what could you do? Or what do you want to do?
I'm always the one to start. Okay, I would look at it from what I call the intergenerational solidarity and not charity. Solidarity where we all have the equal feeling. I put it in a sentence like, yes, where your gains, I feel that your gains are my gains. I mean, I'm talking about intergenerational solidarity, where all of us feel for each other. Your fall is considered my fall. Your gain is considered my gain. If we understand it from this perspective, then of course, both the older generation and the younger generation would want to hold hands and move together. We're talking about being on the table of decision making. It is good, but it may not be enough if we don't have capacity and skills to engage at the table. So in as much as we are being given this opportunity, let me, in fact, thank the GEF on this quickly, that GEF has done so well. I think this is the first time I'm really seeing GEF bring the youth into this space. And I know with the discussion we've been having since yesterday and previously, GEF is going to go a long way. I mean, for those of us who believe in the Bible, there's the saying that the apostles did well, but Paul exceeded them all, meaning that we have some financial mechanisms to the UNFCCC that are engaging the youth, but I know with the step taken by GEF, they are going to do exceedingly well. So I would entreat the GEF to engage in mentorship and more capacity building for the youth if we really want this issue of intergenerational solidarity to become a thing of a reality. And I would want to use this opportunity to announce that the Hatov Foundation, where I work, is actually about to launch what we call the Hatov Youth Climate Fellowship, where we'll be giving mentorship to some of these young people within the country and then across Africa to be able to have an understanding of this issue. So when we get the opportunity to be at the same table, we'll be able to share valuable inputs. Because mind you, you know, sometimes for the issue of youth tokenism, okay, we need to include the youth so that we take the box of youth inclusiveness. But the issue is how influential has that youth on the table been in terms of making concrete input into the decision, and those decisions being seen, being materializing. So if we have the capacity and the skill, when we are at the same table, we will see those inputs really manifesting. So I would thank GEF and plead that we consider in every endeavor that we are, the issue of intergenerational solidarity should be something that should be driving all of us. And I'll entreat the partners that are here and the donors that would also need support in doing some of this training or carrying out the training for the youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anchel.
I would have to say lean into the uncertainty. Be uncomfortable or get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Youth are innovative and imaginative, and I think that scares the grown-ups a little bit. So lean into the uncomfortability and be comfortable with us challenging you, with challenging your worldview. Because once we move past that, I think we can see real amazing change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pues primero, pues agradecer al GEF, ¿verdad? Por tomarnos en cuenta como jóvenes en este espacio, y quiero decirles que le apuesten más a la juventud, ¿verdad? Que sigamos trabajando, como decía acá mi compañera, que podamos unir esfuerzos, tanto ustedes como nosotros los jóvenes, que nosotros también soñamos y que este sueño se vuelve realidad. Entonces, creo que sí se puede trabajar desde los pueblos, ¿verdad? Sí podemos nosotros poder trabajar, ejecutar proyectos, y estos fondos llegan desde nuestra comunidad y se invierte en la comunidad, ¿verdad? Entonces quiero motivarlos para que nosotros como jóvenes sigamos trabajando. Sé que hay muchos jóvenes aquí, ¿verdad? Y entonces les quiero decir que sigamos uniéndonos esfuerzo. Quizás estamos retirados y la distancia, pero ahora también hay medios como hacer para poder tener reuniones y poder hacer algo unidos como una red grande, global, ¿verdad? Y poder seguir trabajando. Creo que esto también lo puede trabajar el GEF, ¿verdad? Unir todos estos jóvenes que estamos trabajando para la protección, la sostenibilidad de nuestros bosques, ¿verdad? Y yo sé que vamos a hacer grandes esfuerzos y vamos a proteger todo el ambiente, toda la naturaleza que tenemos a nuestro alrededor.
Gracias.
Okay, very briefly, I mean, there's no public policy problem in the world where the effective solution comes from elite decision-making. The most effective solutions, whether it's biodiversity, nature, protection, will come from greater inclusion. So whether that's intergenerational, whether that's including indigenous people, enhancing gender equality, the solution will always be more profound, more effective through greater inclusion. And so Canada has is trying to do that through our work here at the GEF Assembly. We sponsored a youth assembly prior to the conference. We're doing quite a bit to support youth engagement in this conference. But that's just a start, and we certainly need to do more, and we will do more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am currently the Acting Director General for IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature. So in 2021, IUCN invited 15,000 young leaders to our World Conservation Congress. And after some months, they developed a youth strategy. And that was launched in 2022, very recently. So what I would like to commit is that in IUCN, we will implement with all our resources and support the youth strategy.
Thank you.
So yesterday I listened to the discussion by the youth, the leadership. You were on the panel yesterday. And clearly for me, we have a common vision. We all want to achieve a sustainable, equitable, and just future. That's what we want to achieve. We both have weaknesses and strengths. And so we need to look at how can those weaknesses and strengths complement each other. There are things that the youth are really absolutely good at, and some of us are not so good at. And so how do we embrace that in terms of addressing the challenges that we're going to face? So for me, moving forward, really, and I think some of you have been saying that, it's really about working together. I run a network of over 100 African NGOs, youth organizations, and IPLCs. And we work together in the network. Because we have a shared vision, we come together. We have mutual respect. We listen, we learn, we share experiences with each other. We are willing to take risks in order to bring about transformation. And if we're not willing to take risks, things will not change. So we take risks. And we have to accept the circle of life. There are always going to be young people. And young people get older. They become the future policymakers. So that is really important. So for me, we are already doing this. We are working together in an organization that embraces and respects the contributions of all its membership. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank from the bottom of my heart all of the panelists who participated in this very first intergenerational fireside chat. Thank you for your openness. There was a lot of listening happening, a lot of giving of stories, values, passion, hopes, expectations, and it's really been a thrilling time. I'm very inspired by this chat. Before we leave, I'm going to invite you to take one word out of this imaginary fire we have. It's a word that you're going to leave with and bring with you for the rest of your time at this 7th Assembly of the GEF. It doesn't have to be a word that we gave the fire. It could be whatever word, something that you want to take away with you on your journey on the 7th Assembly. I'm bringing hope with me.
I'll take humility.
I'll take learning. And I'll take listening.
I'll take brave.
Yo me llevo esperanza y amor.
Gracias, muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to hand it over to Gabriela, who will tell you a little bit more about what's going to be happening for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Big
Once
applause
again,
to everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I will not, I know that we are running a little bit late, but I just, I hope that you see what happened here today. We have had elders, we have had young representatives of government, representatives of civil society, conservation leaders, women, men. For me, it feels like we're really starting to walk the talk. And this is really, for me, this is inclusion, this is partnership, and this, I hope, as we work through the next couple of years, just in the next couple of hours, that we really figure out to do this well. And I am so inspired, and I'm so grateful to all of you for being here, and exactly what Emily was saying, to share your personal stories. Because I think that is the way that we dare to be ourselves, and that's what we bring to the hope. So with that, I also want to take this opportunity to really thank Emily Leclerc for fabulous moderation and for bringing and letting people
Thank
say
you.
what they have to
Thanks
say.
for
So
having me.
thank you.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
And for everyone else, you will hear from her again later in the opening ceremony. So you will only miss her for a couple of hours. Thank you. And I will not go into the agenda. Susan did that earlier. We will have the 3 confabs, one of intergenerational collaboration, one on women leadership, and one on indigenous peoples. We are then going to come back here at 3:15, if everything goes as it should, in a plenary where we will bring all of the conversations of this day together and start really thinking, how are we going to act on this and what are we going to do together? So I'm really looking forward to it, and thank you all for being here. Have a great afternoon. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.